Mistress Hedgehog by Dorothea King. The first frosts had begun to appear in the mornings, covering the ground with a carpet of glistening white crystals, and the animals in the oak tree knew winter was on its way. As they all prepared for it, there was a certain amount of excitement in the air. With winter came snow, and that meant snow games. Miss Mouse had already started making her winter dresses and had knitted gloves, scarves, and warm woolen hats to keep out the cold. Sir Squirrel had been to the tailor to be measured for his new cloak and had instructed him to put in an extra thick lining, as he was sure this was going to be an exceptionally hard winter. Master Rabbit had been banging and sawing for weeks, making extra strong shutters for his windows, and had completed a new burrow deep under the tree, which he referred to as his winter quarters. The only person that wasn't making any preparations was Mistress Hedgehog, but then, as everyone knows, hedgehogs always sleep through the winter, so there was really no point. One late autumn evening they were all gathered in the hedgehog's front parlour, roasting chestnuts over the fire and drinking hot blackberry juice. The rabbit was chatting to the squirrel about his idea for a new super sledge which all three of them would be able to sit on. Both Miss Mouse and the squirrel thought this was an excellent idea. They were all laughing at what fun they could have on it when they heard a stifled sob from the depths of the armchair. Mistress Hedgehog had her handkerchief up to her face and was crying bitterly. Of course they were all terribly concerned. What could be wrong? It took the hedgehog a good few minutes to compose herself, but eventually she managed to tell them why she was so upset. "Every year," she gulped, "I listen to you all talking about fun and games, and now—" Yes, they all nodded. "I've never seen snow," she wailed. "Oh, you'd love it," said the rabbit happily. "It's fun to play with, and even if you fall down, it's so soft, nobody ever gets hurt." The hedgehog let out another great wail. "Don't tell me about it. I just want to see it. The trouble is, it's come and gone by the time I wake up." "We could wake you," said Mrs. Mouse. "I'd never hear you tapping at the door," gulped the hedgehog. "Once my head hits the pillow, that's it till spring." The rabbit suddenly leapt to his feet. "An alarm clock! I could make you an alarm clock." "You could try, my dear fellow," said Sir Squirrel. Mistress Hedgehog beamed at the rabbit through her tears. "I'd be ever so grateful," she said, "and once I had seen the snow, I could go back to bed." They all parted on a happy note, especially the rabbit, who was really a kind-hearted little fellow and liked to help when he could. The following day, Miss Mouse went with the hedgehog to the fairy market to buy some material for a warm cloak. After all, if she was going to come out in midwinter, she must be dressed for the occasion. Mistress Hedgehog chose a rich purple velvet and a length of fur fabric for the trimming. On Miss Mouse's advice, she also purchased some warm woolen socks. Snow could be very cold to the toes. By the time they got back to the clearing, the rabbit had already drawn up plans for the alarm clock. It looked very complicated, but he assured them that it wasn't. It was simply a matter of getting all the cogs to fit. Another surprise awaited them when Mistress Hedgehog opened her front door. Just inside the door, on the hall table, was a large gift-wrapped box with a huge bow on the front. Miss Mouse reached over and looked at a label which was sticking out from behind the ribbon. "It's from Sir Squirrel," she said in amazement. Mistress Hedgehog tore off the wrapping, and there inside was the prettiest muff she'd ever had seen, made of white satin and beautifully quilted. "How kind everyone is," she murmured, quite overcome. That night Miss Mouse measured the hedgehog for her new cloak and the following day they stitched it together. When it was completely finished, Mistress Hedgehog hung it on the back of her bedroom door. It was certainly a splendid cloak, and she couldn't wait to wear it. Within a few weeks the frosts had begun to last longer and longer, and Mistress Hedgehog began to get very sleepy. One morning she announced that she really would have to retire to her bed. Luckily, the rabbit had managed to finish the alarm clock in time. It certainly did look a weird contraption, but as Sir Squirrel pointed out, if it works, what does it matter? The rabbit instructed her how to use it and suggested she set it for mid-December, although they sometimes did get the snow before then. It was usually the slushy kind and no good for snow games. For weeks the hedgehog slept, and in that time the forest was flooded with rain, dense fog, and ravaged by gale-force winds, but no snow. A week before the hedgehog was due to wake up, there was still no snow, and the other animals were beginning to get rather worried. What would happen if this winter no snow came? How disappointed the hedgehog would be. On the very night before the hedgehog was due to wake up, the mouse, the squirrel, and the rabbit all stood in the clearing, gazing up at the sky. The moon was bright, the stars twinkled, but there wasn't a sign of snow to be seen. Sadly, they all turned away and were about to go back inside when they heard a loud whooshing noise, and a voice called out, "Coo-wee!" There, before them, about to make an excellent landing, was Witch White on her broomstick. The animals all stood open-mouthed as she glided down and bustled up to them. "Thought you might be having some problems," she giggled. "You should know by now you can never rely on the weather." "Can you help?" asked Mrs. Mouse, who knew the witch was excellent at putting things right. "Precisely what I'm here for, my dear. Now, all gather round and I'll just say a few words." From the inner pocket of her cloak she produced a pointed stick which had a glowing end, and proceeded to wave it around in the air, chanting a funny kind of rhyme as she did so. "Snow so light and snow so bright, cover the forest with a blanket of white. Make it clean and make it right, and please make certain it comes tonight." They all waited, faces upturned to the sky, but nothing happened. "Oh, something seems to have gone adrift," said Sir Squirrel. "Everything comes to those who wait," replied the witch, and climbed back onto her broomstick. "Now I suggest you all go and get a good night's sleep. You're probably going to have a busy day tomorrow." And with that she shot off into the sky, narrowly missing a branch off the oak tree on her way. They all did as she had said, as it really was quite late by now. The following morning they were woken by the ear-splitting jangling of bells. Sir Squirrel sat up too quickly and nearly knocked himself out on the bedpost. Miss Mouse dived for the cover under her eiderdown, but Master Rabbit just grinned. His alarm had worked, and right on time at that. Within minutes, windows were thrown open, and the mouse, the squirrel, and the rabbit poked their heads out to see if the spell had worked, and it had. Every leaf, every twig, and every single blade of grass was covered with a crisp white layer of snow, and standing right in the middle of the clearing was Mistress Hedgehog, her face beaming. At last she could see the snow. The others couldn't wait to join her and quickly put on their warmest clothes. The rabbit was the first out and was dragging not a 3-seater sledge but a 4-seater. "Surprise, surprise!" he shouted, and the others came dashing out. "By Jove, you've actually done it, old boy," said Sir Squirrel. When everyone was ready, they decided to take the sledge to the meadow to see just how well it would work. Miss Mouse and Mistress Hedgehog were allowed to ride, while the squirrel and the rabbit pulled it through the forest. On reaching the meadow, they found that a lot of other woodland folk had the same idea. All around them were fairies, elves, and other animals having a glorious time in the snow. The sledge worked amazingly well for the first hour, but when the rabbit decided to take it for an extra long run, the whole thing seemed to get out of hand. First it swerved, then it shuddered, and was going at top speed when it hit a clump of grass and pitched the rabbit head first into a huge snowdrift. Everyone laughed. All that morning they stayed at the meadow. Miss Mouse taught the hedgehog how to make snowmen, and afterwards she made rather a splendid one of her own. Admittedly, it was rather unusual, but it was her first attempt. Around midday they heard the sound of tinkling bells, and out of the forest pranced 2 small horses pulling a beautifully decorated sledge. Across the meadow they came and stopped right beside Mistress Hedgehog and Miss Mouse. "They've come to take us for a ride," said Miss Mouse, clapping her hands together in delight. "I expect Witch White sent them." In the back of the sledge were some warm rugs, and quickly the mouse and the hedgehog tucked themselves in. "Where are they taking us, do you think?" whispered the hedgehog. "Oh, anywhere and everywhere," giggled the mouse. "Let's just wait and see." Overnight the forest had been transformed into a winter wonderland. Long icicles hung from the trees, snowflakes glistened on every leaf, and muddy puddles had been turned into miniature skating rinks. The little horses took them on a grand tour of the forest, eventually stopping in the clearing where the oak tree stood. By this time, Mistress Hedgehog was beginning to feel very sleepy, and regretfully she said good night to Miss Mouse, Master Rabbit, and Sir Squirrel, and thanked them all for such a wonderful day. She was asleep almost before her head touched the pillow. It would be spring again before the hedgehog woke up, but the beautiful velvet cloak would be a constant reminder of the days she spent in the snow. Sometime during the night the snow melted, and by morning there wasn't a single snowflake to be seen. The animals couldn't help wondering, had the spell worked? Or would the snow have come anyway?